Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you to everybody out there in virtual land. I think we had significantly more people who actually signed up virtually. So, bad news for you all. You're not eligible for door prize. Sorry. Or the good food, exactly. So, and again, thank you, Andrew Bartolotta, for helping us host this. Always appreciate that. So, my name is Craig Wright with Lipscomb Pitts. Now a Higginbotham partner for, a year and a half now, right, Rick? So, been a great marriage. Really enjoyed the relationship there, and got some good folks from our Higginbotham team in Texas up here with us today. So, we're going to talk about compliance, and we're going to talk about the evolution of wellness and the advent and the importance of recognizing mental health well-being, especially given the, what we've been through here with COVID, and it's just been a hard sled for a lot of folks. So we will get into those topics as well. Great program, great speakers. Our first speaker is Bob Radecki. He will be joining, or Sarah Gillespie from our office here, our Director of Compliance, will be joining. I did tell you I have fun facts about you. So you'll have to guess. Some of these fun facts are true. Some of them are not facts, but they're still fun. So we'll see. Yes, indeed. Bob is the president of Benefit Comply, long history with benefits compliance. We've worked with his firm independently now for well over a decade. Just been a great resource for us, and Sarah interacts with Bob quite a bit, as well as our internal team at Higginbotham. We have an in-house counsel who actually worked for the Department of Labor previously, but he's 6'9", so this wouldn't work for him. So. Legit. He played basketball at Texas Tech. So, but Bob is, like I said, done a great job for us. Fun fact about Bob, he is from Minnesota. Got that? But he actually lived in Memphis when he began his career. And Bob, I'm not going to date you. I'll just say that there was a president in the office at the time who was an actor. But they're all actors, so this guy was an actor in Hollywood. So sorry, Bob, but that gives a good 8-year spread. So good. Sarah Gillespie, our Director of Compliance, who will be joining Bob. Fun fact about her: she is a forerunner and an innovator. So she left California well over a decade ago. So everybody else has just gotten around to that. So yeah, congratulations. I made a good decision, by the way. As far as another real quick fun fact about Bob is the second coolest Polish person I know. So, second. That honor goes to Jennifer Watson back here. So, she's number one. And I will say that in all thanks and gratitude, Jennifer pulled all the logistics together for this program today, and you're local, virtual, et cetera. So, thank you, Jennifer. She's done a great job with that. As far as our HIG Health Risk Management team, after Bob speaks, we'll have a real brief break, about 10 minutes or so, and we'll come back. And Jennifer Speer and Andrea Miller from our Higginbotham team down in Texas, some of you may have met them previously, done a great job for us. We've been really excited about engaging with them. Jennifer heads up the team, and she has been, I guess, over a decade or right around that time with Higginbotham, and just, again, done a great job for us. She came to Higginbotham from NASA, so she engaged in wellness and health risk management programs, all the way from the astronauts down to folks sweeping the floor. So she has a great population health background. Fun fact about Jen, she has closets full of Tang from her NASA days that are expired from 1984, and she still drinks them, and they taste just the same. You wouldn't know, so. They can make it to space and come back. It's all good. So, then Andrea, who is recent, I guess, within the last year and a half or two. So, she comes to us with a very lengthy mental health background. Has very, very extensive background. We're extremely excited about having her on board. And this was something that Jen had recognized that we needed to do, especially given the pandemic and the way mental health and well-being have gone. Fun fact about Andrea, she has worked in a psych ward, so she's seen some stuff. She does know Michael Myers and Hannibal Lecter, so be nice to her. Otherwise, she might share your address. So, like I said, some of these are true, some of these might not be so true. I don't know. So, logistics-wise, otherwise, announcements, HRCI credit will be handed out here at the end, and then virtually we'll get a link out for a certificate on that. And then we will have the door prizes at the end as well. And again, we'll have a little bit of about a 10-minute break in between. Jennifer, did I miss anything? I announced the door prizes in HRCI. So, in the restroom, yeah, there is a restroom code out here if you need it. You've got a little 4-digit code, but it's on the table out here. So, thank you. Without further ado, Bob Radecki. Gillespie, thank you.
Welcome, and yes, I am from Minnesota, and thanks for letting everybody know that, because as soon as I opened my mouth, you all would know I wasn't from around here, right? That was pretty obvious pretty fast. But I love telling people when I travel around the country and anywhere south of Iowa, that I grew up 3.5 hours north of Minneapolis. I know you in Tennessee, that's Canada, right? Because you can't go 3.5 hours north from St. Paul without being in Canada. Oh, you can. I was very close to the Canadian border. I know it shows in my voice, so just go with it. Just a little more about working with Lipscomb, Fitz, and Sarah. Again, and Craig mentioned this, but what I do is I lead a team of attorneys and analysts that just deal with employee benefits compliance, just health and welfare compliance. All we do is think about all the things you love to hate, you know, the Affordable Care Act and Erisa and the Internal Revenue Code and all that. And so I think the value we bring is we have that like laser focus on just that stuff, and then we engage with one of the leading insurance organizations in a market, be their back room in the compliance. You're kind of lucky with Lipscomb and Pitts because you kind of have the best of both worlds. You've got Sarah internally here that really pushes us, and I'm not saying that just to be nice, because she knows as much about this stuff as we do, but Lipscomb and Pitts has to deal with 1,000 things with you, right? All your renewal and your finance and all that kind of stuff, and so what we can do is just focus on these rules and regulations and what's coming and do analysis and together. I think in all seriousness, it's kind of unique. A lot of our clients don't have internal experts. Great work, and Sarah, if you ask a question during the middle of this one that I don't know the answer, I'm upset at you because you do that all the time. Just kidding. So what we're going to talk about today is there's a lot here, but in an environment like this, my hope is that it's more that's a good word. Warning you about what's coming and being aware, not going into the gory details. We're not going to dive into certain section of the regulation and stuff like that. That's why you come to us afterwards, and you're going to hear us say a lot. If you got more questions about any of these in particular, you reach out to your Lipscomb and Pitts representatives. They get there on the phone. We talk. We figure it out. But I do want to encourage you to ask questions. Right? We have some time, so ask questions as we go through. If we get a little behind on time, I'll say, okay, can you hold off the questions? So the three main topics are, it's a big word, transparency and coverage, but there is a whole lot going on that falls under that umbrella. We just lived through the machine-readable file debacle a few weeks ago, but before we go into the details of that, I want to talk about why that stuff even matters. So we're going to talk about all these new rules you're hearing about, the new drug reporting and all that, but I'm going to talk a little bit about why it even matters, which I think is important as we figure out what you have to do as an employer. We, of course, had a little tiny decision that nobody heard about at the Supreme Court a couple months ago. I'm not going to talk about the Supreme Court decision or the background. I'm going to talk very specifically about how that might impact your benefits. That's all we do. Have the debate about that topic in the Supreme Court decision in your own place, in your own time. That's not my business. It's going to be, okay, what does this mean to what happens? And then put a little crystal ball out there and talked about a few things that are coming, some of which I think are pretty much for sure going to happen. We now know that there's increased subsidies for individual health insurance will be coming in some legislations in D.C. I'll say right now, and I'll say it again, why are we going to talk about increased subsidies for individual health insurance? If you're a human resource manager, employee benefit manager, you're going to need to understand how this are going to have questions. So it's not necessarily something that directly impacts your group health plan, but you're going to need to know how that stuff works, because when you see what's happening, employees are going to be asking about it. All right, so that's our agenda, and then your favorite topic, Sarah, the wellness rules. Yeah, we'll get to that one, and why that's Sarah's favorite topic when we get to that. So, talk about kind of health transparency. What you've been hearing a lot about, two things I want to say about before we get into the details of it. You've been hearing about, machine readable files on our health costs that are posted, the drug reporting, this health tool that's coming up. We'll talk about all those in detail, but why is even all of this going on? The reason it's all going on is that the health industry, the medical industry, is the most bizarre industry the way it charges for things. Probably unique, right? We don't know what we're going to pay for something until after we get it. So I come up with a little analogy I think will help you think about this. Imagine if the wine industry worked like the medical health industry. Here's how you'd buy wine. Ready? You would go to your wine store and you would say, I'm having a great steak tonight. Great steak. And I want a really good bottle of red wine to go with it. And your wine proprietor would give you this bottle of wine. This is perfect for what you're having. Now, you can insert doctor and wine provider when I go through this. You would take the bottle of wine home. You would have the steak. You would drink the wine. It was wonderful. Then you would go back to the wine store, and you would say, that was $3,422. And you said, what? He said, you wanted a great bottle of red wine to go with that steak you're having. I gave you exactly what you wanted. I'm a quality wine provider. I did my job. $3,472. The bottle was $760. The label was made by a special artist. That was $1,000. The cork is a special cork. Okay? Well, the wine was $6, but then, and that's how you would buy wine. That's how we buy healthcare. Go to the doctor. You get home. You get an EOB that says we charge you this, right? So what the transparency rules are is the first attempt to finally kind of pull back the covers and see what stuff costs, or at least good estimates of what costs. And I really believe this is a game changer in the industry. And so even though we're going to get a little frustrated with administrative rules and stuff we got to do and regulations and all that, can I say BS? BS. Okay. At a high level, I think we can agree that it would be better to know more about what stuff costs in advance because we can be better buyers. And I actually think it puts the power kind of back in the hands of you, the employer buyer, and then the consultants that you work with, when we know more, to make better decisions about what we're buying than the way it's working now. That's my theory. But we got to get through some of the details and stuff, right? A good question. These particular rules have no impact. We're going to see the coding in the data that's out there, but it doesn't change it at all yet. So that's a whole separate, whether they go to ICD number 9, 10, 57, or whatever we are now, that's a completely separate set of rules. All this stuff we're going to be talking about is just, for the first time, they have to tell us what we're charging and what we're... It all used to be secret, right? I thought.
I was just going to mention that we are already investing in this. We've seen this. And so we actually recently hired someone, Jordan Bateau, to be
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be so important because, like, for example, we're going to talk about those machine-readable files that got posted. Don't go open one of those up. It's gobbledygook. It's just a huge database. But what's going to happen is we're going to have the ability, once we get all this data, start to analyze it and make some decisions around it and help you think about it, right? Having the healthcare industry just throw billions of records into the ether doesn't do anything for us by itself, but now it's there. Smart people like, I don't know who I haven't met your data analyst yet, but I'm sure he was way better at math than I ever was. Is going to be able to take that data and figure out how to help us. That's the big picture, right? I'm not trying to sell. And is it perfect? Absolutely not. But are we going to know a lot more about healthcare costs 2 and 3 years from now than we do now? Absolutely. So here's my little timeline of all kinds of stuff that's been going on, right? You might not know this, but about 1.5 years ago, hospitals were supposed to start reporting what they charge different carriers and different payers. And that's started to come out. I mean, it's been a kind of a slow slog. Hospitals have not been really thrilled about having to tell all of us what they charge everybody. And the last statistic I heard was something like 25% of the hospitals have posted everything they're supposed to in the right way. Another huge percentage have posted some things not in the right way. And then there's still a percentage out there that is still kind of not fine yet. But again, we're getting more data. Then this last January, had the No Surprises Act. We're not going to talk about that in detail today. Some bunch of other little things that were part of the CAA. And then this last July, we had this machine-readable file. We're going to go through each one of these really quickly, so I'm not going to go through them all in detail. And then what's coming the next 2 years are some new price transparency things that, again, are supposed to help our figure this out. So let's go through them one at a time. We kind of broke them into phases. This is our terminology. This isn't, regulations don't say phase one. They're worth thinking about. So I don't know about you, but Sarah, how many questions did you get about this machine file thing and the 4,762, right?
Well, yes, a lot of it was related to the what on our company website, what. So I know we're going to talk about that. Too, I will just say real quick, a lot of this information comes through the I send out every month. So if you are not getting that, please see me.
Is the first, I said the hospitals had to start reporting what they charge people in 2021, and on July 1st, the carriers and payers. When I say payer, it means kind of means you, if you're self-insured, you're the payer of the claims through your TPA. I mean, TPA is actually doing it, but you, the employer, are the payer, right, of the services. So the payers, insurance companies, us, we're supposed to put up files showing what we pay all the different providers for different services, because all of these companies have, right? Everybody pays everybody differently based on their provider contract. It all used to be secret. Now it's all in the open. So when our hospitals start telling us what they charge everybody, and the payers, you and the insurance company, start telling what they pay everybody, this is the billions of records of data that we're going to have put out there in the public to start to analyze. And we're learning already in these early stages some fascinating things. I'll just give you one little tidbit that we learned out of the hospital files. We all knew that hospitals charge different insurance companies, different payers, different things. We've known that for years. We had no idea how different. And how different it was in really rare, interesting circumstances. There was a hospital in Milwaukee, when the data was released, showed that for an MRI, they charged the same insurance company, United Healthcare, something like $1,000, and I don't remember the numbers, $1,000 or something if it was the United HMO, $4,000 if it was a self-insured PPO. Same hospital, same service, same insurance company. That's kind of criminal, I think. I just say that's wrong. That's too high. That's just wrong. Same exact service. So these are the kind of things we're going to learn. So our part of it was these files. We put up 2 files. We were supposed to, insurance company or TPA was supposed to put up 2 files, what they pay different providers in network and what they pay if it's out of network. There wasn't a separate prescription drug file that's not going to get posted. There's some complications with the rules that's been delayed. And again, then we all came to you and said, especially if you're self-insured, you were supposed to put a link to that file on your website. If you haven't done it yet, don't worry about it. This is like one of the most least important things I've had in my compliance career in the last 20 years, if the link's there or not. Okay, we should have it. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but I actually, you heard it here first. I actually am going to predict that CMS is going to come out and say, no, employers don't really need a link. It's already public. The TPA put it up in public. Rules weren't clear, so it was good. It was a good idea if you did that. Okay? So these files went up. We're starting to look at them. Oh, by the way, who do you think the first person in the world that wanted to look at Cigna's rate file is the provider relations person at United Healthcare? and who was the first person that wanted to look at United Healthcare's rate file? Is the provider relations person? Because now they all get to see who else is paying and charging. Again, the theory here is competition works. If everything's secret, you don't have true competition. There's actually, if we actually know how much Ford sells their car versus Toyota sells their car, you get competition. That's the theory about this being more. Okay, so that just happened effective July 1st. Okay, we kind of got a little ahead of myself. If you're fully insured, your carrier posted it, not a big deal. If you're self-insured, I know, Sarah, you went out and said, websites, got him in a public place. Important where. So worried about the world didn't come to an end on July 2nd. That's step one. Now all this data's out there. Well, a lot of this data's out there. So then, step.
So just to clarify, so what he's talking about, that it had to be posted on a public website, had to be fully accessible. So if you are a self-funded client, but so because then admin sites and all of that usually require login, you've got to have some that'll completely ridiculous. As what I have always said about these files is they're called machine readable because they're not human readable. They are literally huge databases of information that you can do nothing with. Say whatever, but the rule says this is. So that's where Bob's saying we think that there's going to be guidance to come out that clarifies that that is ridiculous. As
they put it on a public site. I can go find either the carrier or the TPA. So it's already out there. Didn't need to put a link on our company website for it to be public, right? But the rules were unclear, so good on you if you did. Good point. We get a lot of confusion about this. This file has nothing to do with your employees. It wasn't something you had to communicate to your employees, give them a notice or anything. Remember, this is just putting what our plans pay out into the public sphere so that your data analyst download all these files and start to do something with them. Next step, after we got the data out there, our plans and carriers are supposed to improve their price comparison tools. Now, this does matter for your participants. What this is you've seen a lot of carriers and some vendors already have some pricing tools. You may have heard of Healthcare Blue Book, where you can look up how certain providers charge for certain things. This is an upgrade. Those tools are going to need to deliver more starting next year. They're going to need to tie the costs to my plans. In other words, your carriers and your TPAs will have tools that if you've got a copay plan and I've got a deductible plan and we're going to the same doctor, we should be able to put in the data on what we're going to that doctor for, and it's going to figure out what you're going to owe at that doctor with your copay plan and figure out what I'm going to owe at that doctor from my deductible. So it's tying both the benefits, costs, and how can we do that now? Because theoretically we know more. What I'm saying. So with the data's out there. So your carriers and TPs are frantically working on upgrading their tools. It'll be interesting to see. You'll see some later this year because the first round is supposed to go into effect on January 1st for 500 specific rules, and then by 2024 for all medicals. Fun to see how that evolves. You're not going to need to do anything. You're not going to be out developing pricing tools on. Yeah. Well, if you want to go into a new business, knock yourself out, but that's not your carriers and your TPAs. This one is the one that fascinates me the most, but it's also the one that third phase is going to be that the rules require providers to give you a good faith estimate in what treatment is going to cost in advance. Have you ever been to the doctor and asked them what something was going to cost? What answer do you get? Right? I mean, because they don't know. The doctor themselves rarely knows what the whole cost. I want to digress just a minute. I want to back up to a couple of years ago. We were talking about the No Surprises Act and how medical bills that were coming it was trying to address. And tease Sarah a little bit because in a session like this, and maybe some of you were there, I said something like, you know, one of the problems is you can go to a doctor and the anesthesiologist comes in as you're getting wheeled into the surgical room, and all of a sudden you find out, you know, and he's out of network. And what are you going to do? You're going to ask him, because you're getting rolled into the anesthesia or into surgery, whether he's in network. Nobody does that. And Sarah raised her hand.
Yes, I would.
Not only would, she did. She was going in for deliver her baby, and she asked the anesthesiologist if he was in network or not. I'm like, you are the only person in the universe
Literally.
who's ever done that.
Wait. First,
You're having a baby.
do you contract with Cigna?
So,
I don't know what I was going to do if you said no, but yes.
So the only reason I bring that up is I was thinking about this part of this presentation going, well, nobody asks their doctor what something's going to cost when they go to the doctor, and then, oh, no, yeah, Sarah would. she would actually do that. Anyway, no, just kidding. But how this is going to work, the rules have been delayed, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But how it's going to work is when you go to the doctor, you schedule a surgery or something like that. Now, obviously, this isn't going to happen if the ambulance is taking you into the emergency room. They're not going to stop at the estimation room first before they haul you in, okay? But when there's scheduled service or stuff like that, what the doctor, hospital, clinic is supposed to do is give you a full estimate of what the treatment is going to cost. Not just the doctor's bill, what they expect the lab costs and what to be. And they're supposed to give a good faith estimate of the cost. And then listen to this. Then they're supposed to forward that good faith estimate to your carrier or your TPA. Your TPA will be able to create what's called an advanced EOB. Now think about it for a minute. This is not going to be hard for the carriers and the TPAs. They're already creating an EOB off the data they get from doctors after they treat you. Once this is set up, if the doctors and hospitals are sending this data in advance in an estimated form, it's not going to take the IT people at the insurance companies much to create a version of the EOB in advance, right? That's not where the holdup is. The holdup is the medical community is not ready to do this. They just don't even, they're just trying to, how are we even going to estimate clearly what these are? And so that's why the rules are on hold right now, as there's negotiations going on about how is the medical community going to be required to prepare this estimate, send to your carrier. But I think that's a pretty fascinating opportunity, isn't it? I mean, getting an advanced EOB before you go with an estimate of what you cost you.
Well, and I think just to be clear on what you're saying, you mean for their specific plan.
Right.
So the idea of getting an advanced EOB sounds like maybe they know the cost of the general estimate. It is supposed to be an estimate based on your plan. If your copay and your deductible are X, this is what it should look like for you. So, you know, when I think about situations I've been in with my doctor or my kid's doctor, when they have to change prescriptions or something like that, usually what happens is she'll say, okay, I'm going to send this one over. If it's super expensive, call me back. She doesn't know, right? So she has two options. She's going to start with the best option, work down the line. So I think
Incredibly helpful.
I don't know if it drills down to that. And they're talking about prescription level, but.
Well, I don't either yet, because the rules literally are being rewritten as we're speaking on what's going to be required, how much detail. But actually, you made me think of something, Sarah. I was doing this session not too long ago, and somebody said, well, is that ever going to happen? I actually think it is, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to use a word that many of you haven't heard for years. There's bipartisan support for this transparency legislation. Let me explain that word to you. Bipartisan. The rules, the original transparency and coverage rules came out during the Trump administration. The Biden administration is continuing to change them and further them along. The Consolidated Appropriation Act was published, that was the big COVID relief bill a year and a half ago, was mostly passed with mostly Democratic support, but the transparency stuff has bipartisan support. And the reason I bring that up is important is that means like a change in administration or change in control in Congress or stuff like that is not going to change rules. Here to stay. Now, the rules will change as we get new regulations and we're trying to figure out parts of it that, figure out. So things will change, but it's not going away. So I think that's important. So I think someday, when we'll get new rules, and the provider community, the hospitals and doctors, are going to have systems to provide these estimates. All right, and then one we're working on this year. I had hair before this one started, but if I had hair, I would have lost it by now with this one. Prescription drug report. I said earlier there's a prescription drug file that was delayed. That was still totally different. Those machine-readable files, there was going to be a prescription drug. That one has been delayed. This is completely different, okay? Prescription drug reporting that's going to start later this year. Again, an attempt to collect a bunch of data on how prescription drugs are paid, what rebates are involved, what, fees involved. And Rick and Craig, your team know this. If you thought healthcare costs were difficult to figure out, prescription drug costs are a black box. The way PBMs operate and pay is pretty uniformly seen as one of the best kept secrets. And so what this reporting is meant to do is to collect a bunch of data, and every year the federal government is going to post data on things, I'll come back to this kind of stuff. Spending, top, most expensive drugs, fastest rising cost drugs, a bunch of stuff on rebates. And in theory, again, if we knew more of this, would this possibly help us control prescription drug costs a little bit? Maybe. Again, I'm not going to oversell this one. I think it's good that we're collecting this data. All it is a data collection report. So what you're going to be doing by the end of this year is you're not going to actually be able to do this. You don't know any of this. Your TPA or your insurance company does. Okay? So your TPA or your insurance company will be submitting at the end of this year data for 2020 and 2021. And then every year we'll get this national report on health on prescription drug costs. Every June after that. So the only problem is this isn't a complete list. This is just actually much longer than this. And actually, Lipscomb Pitts has a guide that they can provide if you're interested in going into the on what the files are and what's in them. Here's how the system is going to kind of work. I'm going to use the term reporting entity. That's either you, your insurance company, or your TPA. Whoever's submitting this data to Centers for Medicare. Special account that has to get its up in Ohio's. And then there's 9 separate files. There's literally templates, 9 separate data files that will be filled out with. There's no way that you can't go in and look up if your TPA or carrier submitted data on your plan. So what we're going to be doing, Sarah, what we're going to be doing as a team, though, is, what you're going to have to do is confirm with your carrier or your TPA, did you submit our data? That's how it's going to work. Sarah, you've been working on, you estimate how many all of their prescription drug claims are versus split?
Majority.
Okay.
So what you're talking about is if you're fully insured, obviously your prescription drug plan, you are self-funded and the same carrier or TPA handles your prescription and you're fine. Where it gets a little bit sticky, you have a carved out PBM or you have a specialty drug vendor that does a certain, high-cost drugs, because data will have to be fed from all of them, coordinated, because one file can be supposedly.
Yep.
So we're aware of this. Like Bob said, we are already in the process of touching base with carriers to find out what is your plan for this prescription.
Starting to get some emails on and carriers are sending emails about this. Right now, they're even struggling with change things up a little bit, and we think there's a round of guidance and instruction. So if you're getting things from carriers and ways that maybe conflict with each other or don't sound like the same thing, don't be surprised. This is going to get worked out. This is, again, another one of those things. I like to talk people off the ledge instead of off the ledge. Okay. And remember what's happening here. We're just reporting drug spending data. It has nothing to do with whether you're paying prescription drugs right or whether you should cover that or not cover it. It has nothing to do with that. Reporting isn't going to be, oh, we got your report and you're not paying for Bob's hair drug good enough. You know, that's not, I don't even know what, obviously I don't know what the name of those are because I don't use them. So don't, I tell people that because we've already gotten some questions like, well, what if we carve out certain specialty drugs? Is this going to get us in trouble? No, it has nothing to do with how you do it. Reporting of data process that we need to start doing is in your carriers. Sarah, before we switch gears, any other thoughts on kind of transparency in general? We're gonna move on to the Dobbs decision next, or questions. Any questions about all? I mean, I threw a whole lot of stuff going on the next couple of years at you. So, unless you live on Mars, you already know more than I need to tell you about the Supreme Court decision. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how this might or might not impact your employee benefits. The first thing I want to talk about relative to the Dobbs decision is it had absolutely zero impact on your employee benefit plans. It meant absolutely nothing. It didn't say anything. It simply said there's no longer a constitutional protection to the rights of board. It didn't change any laws. Benefits, it didn't say anything about what's legal or not legal. None of that. What it did was threw the ball back into the states. Right? Okay, so what is going to matter to you as an employee benefit manager is what states do. Okay? And this is going to be a long haul, folks. You've already been, if you follow us at all, you've already seen states passing new laws on both sides of the issue, putting those laws on hold already, lawsuits being filed. This is going to be the state laws that are going to come on board over the next period of time. This is going to evolve for the next number of state laws will get passed, they'll get thrown out by court, they'll get repassed, they'll get changed. This is going to be an evolution for a long time. So that's the first thing, is just sit back, deep breath, and we'll watch this, and then as things happen that can affect your benefit plans, then you can start to make decisions. Right now, it's kind of the wild, wild west. So, and then one other thing, it's going to come up times. In our world, in the employee benefits world, state laws typically only apply to the insurance contracts that are issued in that state. And so it's usually easier to, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. We already are seeing some states trying to pass some laws that are going to try to extend their state law across state lines into things happening in other states. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Those are going to all get challenged, and we'll be really interested to see how those kind of laws play out in the courts the next couple of years. So that's I just want to mention that's a bigger development in this area. So let's talk about, I just said, forget about the federal government, it's all states, but let me tell you why further. The Supreme Court decision didn't do anything. There is zero chance there will be any federal legislation passed on either side of the issue. I don't care which side you're thinking about. There's absolutely no chance any federal legislation will pass. I very rarely will predict what Congress will do with such confidence. But reason I'm saying that, if you don't follow this, is you've all heard about in the Senate, you need 60 votes to get past a filibuster, okay? And so right now the Senate's 50-50. Even after this election this fall, there's virtually no chance that either party's going to have 60 seats. It might shift, a little one way or the other, but without 60 seats, neither party can forward legislation other than budget legislation. So maybe some budgetary little things we can push through in the next couple of years, but again, I can confidently say there's going to be no major federal legislation passed relative to abortion rights or benefits and coverage and things like that. So we can not worry about that. You might have heard the news that the Biden administration did an executive order asking the agencies to look at current law and current regulations to see if they could make any changes or adjust regulations to further support abortion rights. We know that's what they're trying to do. Very little they can do there. So we may see something from Health and Human Services or the Department of Labor over the next months saying, oh, we're going to adjust this employment rule to say this. But again, there's not a whole lot under current law they're going to be able to do through regulatory changes. We'll see some stuff, but relative to benefits, I'm expecting very little. So the punchline here is, as a benefits manager, benefit manager, I'm expecting very little activity on the federal level that will affect your benefit plans. Okay? The state level, it's exactly the opposite. Drinking from a fire hose. There's going to be so much going on. Again, on both sides, right? And so what you have to understand about, oh, I'm sorry, did you get a copy of the presentation? Let's send this out. Oh, you do, okay. This is just some resources. If you're a multi-state employer, it's virtually impossible to keep up on all the things that are being proposed and all the laws. So this is just a number of resources that are trying to keep up on state law activity. Okay, so that's all it is. And the first one, Kaiser Family Foundation, is the one that's most directly related to benefits and coverage. It's going to try to keep up on state laws having to do with coverage. Okay, so those are just some resources for you to follow as this evolves if you're a multi-state employer. So here's kind of the slide that we want to spend the most time on. This is what you do need to pay attention to now with your benefits. If you're fully insured, as I said before, the state law that applies to your plan is the state law where your plan is issued, where your group benefit plan is issued, not where the employee lives, not even necessarily where your company might have multiple sites, right? What state was that contract issued in? That's the state law that will apply. So as you see states starting to either restrict health plans being able to cover abortion-related services or expand them, it's going to be based on where that group insurance policy is issued. And as a buyer, you don't have any choice there. If you buy a group insurance policy from a carrier that issues it in Texas, you're going to get an insurance policy that follows the Texas state law. If you buy one that issues the policy in the state of Washington, you're going to get one that follows the Washington state law for your employees wherever they live. Okay, so that's the first thing. If you're fully insured, you got to know what state law that policy is subject to. I mentioned earlier, states are going to try potentially to extend their insurance laws to policies issued outside the state. See how that goes. I think most of those are not going to survive. So if you're fully insured, where's your policy issued? What's the state law? What does it say about abortion rights in that state where that policy is issued? If you're self-insured, you got a bit more flexibility. There's this law called Erisa you may have heard of. And for self-insured plans, Erisa preempts, which means the state insurance laws generally, us compliance people love the word generally because there might be an exception. But generally, Erisa preempts that the state insurance laws can't apply to your self-insured plan. So the employer that has a self-insured plan has potentially more flexibility in terms of how they want their plan to operate. Only one we're really interested in watching relative to, not the only one. One of the ones we're really interested in watching is, you've heard, I think Texas and Oklahoma, and I don't know, a couple other states that have passed these laws now where there potentially is criminal liability for someone that does anything to support someone getting an abortion. We don't know yet how Erisa could potentially impose. That's something that we're going to be watching. Do we have any risk as employers under those kind of state laws? Maybe. Above my pay grade. Talk to your legal counsel. I mean that. This is a risk issue. You know, those kind of laws are something that, again, we're going to see played out in the courts over the next few years.
Going back to fully insured plans and where the plan is issued, I have had a couple ask about, well, we have a location in such and such state. Let's look at that. And the answer is maybe, because, for instance, if you are with the Blue and they're each their own operation in each state, and so you actually have to get permission to change it to another blue state. So you can't just say, I want this situation permit rules about you have to have a certain number of employees in that state in order to claim that as your. Definitely something we can explore with anybody who is fully insured, but just a little. And then a quick note about self-funded. I feel like everybody knows. Just because your plan is self-funded and you're under Erisa does not mean that, for instance, in the state of Tennessee, in Tennessee, it is still illegal. So what you can do is travel to a state where it is legal, and your plan will cover it.
Yeah, so even if a plan has coverage, it's still not going to reimburse a claim unless whatever the claim was legal.
Maybe I should add, too, that just because self-funded is fully insured doesn't mean your self-funded plan currently covers a. First, if it's self-funded, you're not restricted to the state situation, but second, two, then you can go to a.
Yep, good question. So, thank you, Greg. So if you are a public entity, city, state, public school, you're not subject to ERISA. You already know that. And so two things about that. One is you are more likely subject to state laws even if you're self-insured. ERISA preemption. Now, it depends on how the state law is written. Not all state insurance laws apply to those entities, but the states have more ability to impose the state insurance self-insured plans that are not ERISA plans. Get that firewall that ERISA provides, state laws applying to your plan. That's a really interesting one because often state laws are written in a way where self-insured public still aren't subject to them, that they're written very specifically not to apply to them. And other times in Minnesota, we have some state laws that apply to school district, public school district plans, that if those plans were subject to ERISA, they never could have done it. Specific insurance laws that apply to those self-insured school district plans, and that was very intentional on the part of them, but it really depends on which. Well, you did a nice segue then. So then the other thing we're getting questions about, and we'll just mention briefly, is you've heard this, that some employers are asking, well, okay, if I've got employees, if I want to support abortion rights on my plan, if it's not allowed, can I help them travel to where it is? And the simple question there is, let's forget about abortion for a minute. Travel for medical care has always been a qualified medical expense. If I need to get knee surgery and I live in a place that doesn't have a good knee surgeon, you can reimburse my travel costs to the knee surgeon in Minneapolis, and that can be provided to me tax-free within the current rules that have been around for forever. And so the same thing applies. If travel for legal medical care can be reimbursed to the employee on a tax-free basis. That's okay. There's some rules about the overnight stay can only be $50 a night. That doesn't mean you can't reimburse an employee for more. It would just be taxable if you did. So what we're seeing is employers that want to do that through a variety of mechanisms. Maybe they're on a fully insured plan that doesn't have a travel reimbursement plan, so they set up a little HRA, health reimbursement arrangement to do that. Some employee assistance programs. And then some employers just have broad travel reimbursement arrangements. Hey, if you need to travel for any medical care, we'll reimburse you up to X. And that existed before Dobbs, right? And so that's the mechanism we're seeing.
Do that, involve counsel, create a travel program that's outside of your group health plan. You could be creating a group health plan because the definition. And if you have a group health plan, it is then subject to COBRA, to ACA rules, to all sorts of things that you don't want to run. Thinking about that, just
bottom of the hour. On the crystal ball, let's predict. This is being recorded, so if we're wrong, we're no next year. You can say, Bob, but you said. But before I do, I want to share one thing with you. Congress gets a lot of flack. Love to beat up on Congress. That's a hobby we have here. I thought that I would share with you. We don't necessarily have it so bad as some other countries. You think our Congress is bad? I'm going to share some real pictures, real legislatures around the world. So can you launch this for me? In their legislation. Mexico, passionate people, right? They're real pictures of legislatures. Italy, and of course in China, everything works perfectly. So this is a huge. Right, okay, so I'm just pointing out we're not alone, okay, with what we're dealing with. So let's talk about what our Congress is looking at doing right now, relative. All right, the family glitch. So again, I said it earlier, but I'm going to say it again. Why I'm going to be talking to you now about buying individual health insurance and how people qualify for subsidies and stuff. Because if these changes get made, it creates some big questions in what your employees might want to do. Staying on your group health plan versus buying individual coverage, and who are they going to go ask questions? To the party of needing to understand how individual health insurance and subsidies. A lot of questions. First question is the family glitch. To remind you what the family glitch is, you know it. You offer coverage to your employees. It's affordable, remember this, if the cost of single coverage meets the affordability rule. All you do is look at single coverage. It doesn't matter what you charge family coverage, right? For employer purposes, okay? The problem is the way that's worded, it really does matter to the family. Because if I offer affordable coverage to my employee based on the single cost, then that employee and their entire family is not eligible for the federal subsidies when they buy individual health insurance, no matter how expensive my family coverage is. So there's this disjoint, the way the IRS interpreted this rule 10 years ago, it actually doesn't kind of make logical sense, right? If I charge my employees $10 to participate in our health plan, that's obviously affordable. If I charge them $2,000 for their families to participate, that might not be affordable, but because I charge them $10 for single, none of those family members are eligible for the subsidy if they go buy their own individual health insurance. That's called the family glitch, and the Biden administration has proposed changing that if the family cost is unaffordable, those family members could go buy individual health insurance on the exchange, and if they qualify for the subsidy, get the subsidized rates. That would be a huge change in how families decide. It doesn't change the employee cost perspective, but it'd be a huge change in how families might look at what would it cost for me to go individual versus staying where I am. So now the glitch needs to have, it just was proposed, there's no rules yet. When the rules are sent out, it's going to be challenged in court. Because the Republican Party, I'm not getting political on you, they say the same, the Republican Party does not want this expansion because it's going to cost the federal government money because it will mean more subsidies will get paid. So there'll be legal challenges when it comes out, and so we'll see. We're just going to have to monitor this one. They're going to propose the rules soon, and we'll see if it survives.
But the good news is, before any panics, this does not impact employers. Employer penalty is still just related to the affordability of the. It's news for families, and they cannot afford. Now have a chance to get subsidy to help them pay. No penalty to the employer.
Impact you in terms of employee relations, but not
right.
not from the penalty. So understand. So I just wanted to give you a quick example of how it might work, right? Today, let's pretend you have a plan that costs $500 for single and $1,500 for family. Okay, that's your total premium. Okay, let's say that you charge, in my first example, $250 for an employee to participate, and you charge $1,100 for the family to participate. Okay, that's your plan. Take somebody making $120,000 a year. Our current affordability number is 9.61. That means if it costs less than $961, it's quote unquote affordable. So this is obviously affordable for the employee, but this would not be affordable for the family, this structure. Family, under the new rule, will be able to go get individual. In my other example, if you're only charging $750 for the family, that's still affordable. That family wouldn't be able to go get something. How it would work if they fix it. Yeah, not yet. That's a darn good guess. There will be something like that if it goes forward, some kind of notice.
When they talk about simplifying.
See, we're talking about the subsidies because if this happens, it's going to be in the middle of the conversation. Okay? So the other big one that's happening right now, subsidies, period. So in the in ARP, the American Rescue Plan, 2.5 years ago, you might have missed it, but they greatly increased the subsidies for people buying individual health insurance, but only for 2021 and 2022. And those are set to expire at the end of this year. In that new bill that was just, you're reading about, the Inflation Reduction Act, I think is what they're calling it. It's the Build Back Better legislation stripped down to less. These increased subsidies are in there. Okay? So they're proposing making them, it's either permanent or extending them 10 years. I can't remember which it is right now, but extending them, okay? This is, I'm showing you this, you don't need to worry about this in detail, but people don't even understand how the subsidy works on the exchange. When you buy individual health insurance, it isn't based on what the insurance company actually charges you. If you qualify for a subsidy, your premium is based on your household income and where you fall in the federal poverty level. So if I go buy individual health insurance, the way they figure out what I pay is they look at where I fall in the federal poverty level, which takes into account your income and number of household members. And then it calculates, I pay a percentage of my income for the insurance. Not the premium the insurance company is charging, I pay a percentage of my income. And then the difference between what I pay as a percentage of income and what the insurance company is charging is what the federal government subsidy is. I'm showing you this only because this was huge. Before this passage of the increased subsidies, if I was at 200% of federal poverty level, I paid 6.5% of my income for a silver plan. It's all based on the silver plan. Now I only pay 2% of my income. This is what's getting extended. Now, none of this means anything to you without real-life examples, so I have some real-life examples for you. Okay? Let's look at what this means to people at different income levels. Let's just go at a $60,000 household income, family of 4. That's, not poverty, but 60,000 family of 4 is also, that's not a lot of money, right? So I would call that a low to middle income. So that puts them at 229% of federal poverty. By the way, I just looked it up. Okay, if you have number of people in a household and income level, you can look up federal poverty levels and find the number. Okay. This number is just a plug number. I just pulled out what last year the average price for family coverage for a silver plan is. So this actually means nothing because the price here in your market with your carriers might be a little higher, might be a little lower. This is just around the country, a family for a silver plan costs around $1,200. Just that, so take that for what it's worth. Remember, I don't care what that is. What I pay is, the way it works is, it looks at my federal poverty level, it goes back to that table I showed you, and it says I owe $158 a month for my family coverage. That's the real number. Okay? The insurance company gets their $1,200. The federal government makes up the difference. That's the subsidy. Now, you may think this is just a low-income program. Let's up a notch here. $80,000 household income. I only pay $409 a month for a silver plan for a family of 4 under the subsidized the subsidy rules today. Let's sink in for a minute. How many companies charge less than $409 a month for family coverage? Very many. You see why I'm saying this is going to be a conversation? If I work for you and I have an $80,000 household income and I have a family of 4 and you charge me $50 for single, I'm in. But you charge $1,000 for family, I got to think about it. Maybe it's better that I send my family over to an individual plan and have them get coverage there. That's the conversation. Last example here. This just shows you the difference if they pass this extension versus if it goes back to what the original subsidy. Bit of perspective for you. Take our $80,000 family again. If this doesn't pass, they'd be back to paying $655 a month. If it passes, they're only paying $409. Watch this one. I give it a very high chance of passing. This is not one of the things in the current legislation that's really being debated in the Democratic Party. That pretty much they're in there. If the bill passes, whether the bill passes or not, still is a big. All right. 2 quick minutes. I know we're at the bottom of the hour for Sarah's favorite topic. Talk more about wellness and things like that. So I hardly know how to spell wellness, so I'm not an expert on it. But I do follow the rules. But I did bring a picture of my wife and I doing yoga the other day. There's no way that is me. Sarah, we have been on this wild roller coaster ride. So when we talk about wellness plans, there's 2 sets of rules you need to worry about. We talk about the HIPAA wellness rules that have been around. Sarah, you know them well. We can only have a 30% incentive, all this stuff. We've been living the HIPAA rules forever. We know how to handle that. EOC has tried and stopped and gotten sued and failed and has been on this wild roller coaster ride because under the ADA, under the American Disabilities Act, we're not supposed to do some of the things we do in wellness plans unless we follow these EEOC rules that seem to never be placed. Okay, and they have the potential of changing the way you do benefits on your wellness plan if they come out. So anyway, I go back to this. So what happened was, there was a way back, the EEOC started suing employers for wellness violations, and they hadn't even put any rules out. They got their butt kicked, to be honest, the EEOC. So they stopped suing and said, okay, we'll issue regulations. Issued regulations, ARP sued them, AARP sued them. Right. Fast forward to the Trump administration issued a new set of EEOC rules about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago maybe, what it was. And then they never finalized them. So when Biden took over, they pulled those rules, which is common. A new administration will often pull pending rules to review them, and we still haven't seen them. You heard a rumor that there's a possibility that because we've got if they come out like they were written, it's going to cause a problem with the incentives we have in our wellness plans for participants. Have incentives for, walking. But we'll be there for you. The point is, we think it may be coming out soon, and we may have to do some rejiggering of your wellness programs to meet the. We're right at the bottom of the hour where we're supposed to be. Sarah, I'll let you, if any last final words or things that we didn't cover.
If you had any questions on any of this, you can.
Now let's close with, again, I think you do have a kind of unique relationship with Lipscomb. I wasn't saying it's just to be nice. Sarah is really smart about this stuff. So what bothers me about working with Lipscomb and Pitts is we never get to eat. they only drag us in when it's really, DEFCON 5, and so it's been a great a great relationship, and you've got a lot of help here with this team. So thanks very much, and we're going to move on to some interesting stuff about mental health and wellness. Although I will say this, you were giving little stories about everybody. I should share one story. I came to dinner last night, got both for the first time, and as I came into dinner, I was informed that, well, we have a mental health specialist, and she's going to be analyzing you at dinner. What? So, like, submitting some report to Lipscomb and Pitts on my mental health, or what the hell is going on? Wait. Oh, great. Oh, now I'm, yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
To college knowing that I wanted to make a difference in the employer market. So the first professionals that I came into contact with when I decided to do worksite wellness were mostly people that went to school to be PE teachers and realized quickly they hated children. So my colleagues were definitely doing somewhat of what I call worksite PE. I mean, there was exercise, a little nutrition, some things involved, but that's why there's not a whole lot of long-term data, because if you're going to school to be a PE teacher, you're not taught how to track programs, how to present this data to CEOs, and how to pull that information. So I still consider wellness somewhat in its infancy when it comes to the industry itself. So with that being said, I feel like it's important to say we need to know where we came from so we can really understand the direction of where we're going. So in the beginning, we had minimal data. There wasn't much out there. I would go into a company and I would say, what are you doing and how are you doing it, and really what do you want to see? Well, back in the day, you guys, guess what everyone wanted? We wanted Biggest Loser contest. So there was a lot of focus on generic programs. But honestly, no one really recognized the importance of wellness programs until they started watching The Biggest Loser. And you think I'm kidding. I'm really not. I got more questions from those shows than anything in that first 5 to 10 years of my career is, can we do a Biggest Loser contest? By the way, with our attorney in the room, the focus was on fitness and weight loss. When we went into companies and we talked to them about wellness, it wasn't ever, hey, what do your claims look like? Hey, how can we improve our health care? How can we make sure our employees and families are utilizing their plan and getting the best that they can? No, it was actually, hey, how can we get them fit? How can we lose weight? And how can we do all these fun things? It was definitely a flash in the pan. We went in and set up fitness centers. A lot of times an employer would say, well, if I have a wellness program, I have to have a fitness center. So let's spend all of our budget on a depreciating asset, put that into the workplace, and see what happens. So with the fitness center, a lot of things came into play that the employer didn't realize. How many of you want to put on exercise clothes, come to work early, and work out with your coworkers? A show of hands. One person. The average employee does not want that. So one of the things early on in my career is going into companies, looking at their budget and saying, what are your employees actually going to do? I had one employer at NASA who was a contractor put in a beautiful facility, and the average utilization was 10 employees a day. That was a huge fail. They did use me after that because I tried to convince them otherwise. So that started to evolve. The fitness center scheme for most employers did not work. If there are certain industries where it does, but the general employer, it doesn't work. So now where do we go? We're seeing our costs rise, everything is skyrocketing, and we need help. So we don't want to constantly just hit the employees up saying, you're going to pay more because you're so unhealthy. What are the resources that we can provide to really change the dynamic of the culture, to see real improvement that's going to stay and become embedded in our corporate culture? So we did an emphasis on challenges and team-based events. All of a sudden, all of the team-building activities fell into the wellness realm. And with that being said, I was showing up and we were doing team building. We weren't doing wellness activities. Is that a piece of the worksite culture? Absolutely. Is that worksite wellness? Not so much. So, health promotion, cost containment, and return on investment. Again, the people that were going into this industry to actually get this going and offer a corporate wellness program, their expertise was not data collection. Their expertise was not showing the return on investment. We had a study come out that some of you might be familiar with, the Safeway study. Does anyone remember that? And everything boomed in wellness. Because Safeway, a large grocer, they were able to show that they implemented a wellness program, and they got these stellar results. They saved so much money. They were going out and speaking at national conferences. Every year for 3 years, I saw someone from Safeway present at my national wellness conference about all the wonderful things that they had done. What improved their cost containment? Change in the benefits plan. It was not necessarily the wellness plan that they implemented. And that was a dagger to the heart for those of us that were wellness professionals that had all of these interesting things to show and all of these things to show that we're able to make it work, because Safeway, you just sunk the ship for us. So it took a couple years to recover an industry from Safeway being so, let's say, fictional in what they were saying that improved their claims. But that's when things changed. All of a sudden, there was an interest from human resources, from the benefits administrators, that, hey, we manipulating that plan made a huge difference. Safeway, we got all of this attention in the wellness world. Why can't we marry those up? So guess what the brokers started doing? Looking for a wellness professional. And all of a sudden, my industry changed. So before, most wellness professionals worked directly for a client. They were internal. And at the time, I was working for NASA, and I'd been there for a decade running their programs. And I was approached by a broker that said, we already know what you're doing. Come do it for our clients. And that has made more sense, and I've made more of a difference working this direction. When I can actually use those medical claims, I can determine the culture of the company, then we together can specifically design programs that work for each company. So one question I like to ask again is, how many of you make typically the same New Year's resolution every year? Most of us do. So I've been trying to lose the same amount of weight for probably 17 years, y'all. And every year I write it down, and every year I'm in the same place. And it's one of those things, we're working with people's health. So again, it's behavioral change. When you're working with behavioral change, it's really hard to get people to change. So embedding these programs into the work site, there's a lot to think about. It's the culture. When you show up to work and you spend your time there, the decisions you make at work impact your life a lot of times more than they impact you at home. So taking that all into consideration and moving forward, we developed a new way to do wellness, developed a new way to embed wellness into the corporate culture. Some companies don't even call their program a wellness program. They work with occupational health and safety. They marry it to that safety program because they say their employees won't respond to wellness. So there's 100 different ways to package it, but at least now there is a way to package it to make it very professional and tie it to the health, the true health of your employees. So where we were pre-COVID, we were focusing on healthcare costs and containment, but the average individual that I work with, typically in the HR department, work benefits, they care for their families too. We're coming in not to just make the wellness program impactful for the employees. We're making it for all of the employees. That includes the team I'm working with. That includes that C-suite. That includes everybody. So that's one thing beneficial about wellness. When you come in and talk wellness, guess what? Everyone's typically happy about it. I rarely deliver bad news. I usually come in with a solution that's going to get everyone excited. I come in with a solution that is going to get your employees excited because I'm giving something. Rarely with the wellness program are we taking anything away. And sometimes we don't even do that, depending on the industry. I have a story to go. I can't help myself with my stories. So I walked into a client, and actually I was working for Higginbotham, and the HR director told me, she goes, my population smoke all day, and I've got to take this off the table. That is going to be the first thing we do for our wellness program. Cringe, want to hear that, y'all? Because I really want to start with something happy before I'm like, you can't have that. And I asked her, I said, well, may I come one day and just watch your employees work? That's all I want, like before we start making big decisions. So this company was described to me as a financial consultant. I get there, you all, they are not financial consultants, they are bill collectors. And they are lined up in rows of cubes, making those calls, getting hung up on, getting cussed out all day long. And they are chain smoking like you wouldn't believe. And about halfway through, I start looking around, I was like, so the last thing I'm going to do to this demographic is take away that cigarette. I'm not going to do it. One, you're going to lose productivity. Two, they're just going to quit. And three, they obviously need a break. And in a lot of these industries where you have a high propensity of smokers, it's because they need a break. And that smoke break gives them that break they typically wouldn't take. So I talked with the population. I met with the HR department. We came up with a different solution. I went and bought these giant quality balls. You know the ones you can sit and work on. They've been around forever. They're inexpensive. I set one at the end of every single row of those cubes, and I went out there and taught those employees fun exercises to do while they passed that ball down that row of cubes and back. So instead of sitting all day hunched over on that phone, only getting a smoke break, all of a sudden they're up and they're moving. And the ones that were smoking just to have the break, they quit smoking because they actually were getting up, moving, and having a better work day. Does that population still smoke more than my other populations? Absolutely. But we solved a couple of problems. We made the worksite more fun, more entertaining, and I don't care what they're doing with that ball. Some of them sat on it, some of them bounced it, some of them hit their neighbor with it. But you know what? They had a better day. The other thing that we did not realize would happen, we helped retention. Because what I am assuming is most of the corporations in that industry, they do the similar thing. You might move for more money, but you're still sitting there, you're still calling, you're still collecting money. So it helped with the retention. They felt better about coming to work. We added a small piece that changed their culture. So just a cool, hey, be creative. There's no one size fits all for worksite wellness. Prevention is priority. Before COVID, you know what we incentivize? Go get your physical, right? No one wants to go do it unless they've had a really good year and they want to show off that they have new numbers. But you know, if it's that time of year and you're not feeling so good about it, you haven't made any improvements, do you want to go get your physical? No, no one does. But that's where we catch things. So that's where we can see things in their infancy. That's when we can get a stage 1 instead of a stage 4 diagnosis. Like, that's what we want. We want those age-appropriate screenings for 2 reasons. 1, it helps your quality of life, and if there is an issue, you can catch it. 2, we also want to contain costs. So if we catch that soon enough, that stage 1 diagnosis is a lot less expensive than that stage 3. And 4, we want you to have a relationship with your primary care physician. Several clients that have a very high ER utilization that I work with, the number one reason they have high ER utilization is because they don't have a primary care physician. So they wake up, they feel terrible. They just want an instant fix. Guess where they're going? Well, tell me, y'all know. You're going to the ER. You know you are, because you don't have a number to call to say, hey, can I come in? Where do I go? So there's different reasons we really push prevention. And in most solid wellness programs, this is just a given these days. We've grown into this. It's not even a question. We incentivize that annual physical. We typically incentivize it with a premium reduction. Minimal health promotion, more health risk management. Of course, we've got the government regulations that we tiptoe around. We keep everything in compliance. And even looking forward, when we're doing wellness programming, we only recommend things that even moving forward with the EEOC will still fall into compliance. I don't have any clients to date that have ever fallen out of compliance. Data-driven programming, we don't focus on ROI. It's almost like a bad word now. Return on investment. So if I'm looking at dollars for return on investment, with the cost of medical care skyrocketing, am I really going to see a return even if my claims are better? Not much. If I have a client that stays the same, we have a win. We have a huge win. So we're just trying to keep you as healthy as we can. And then moving toward population health management, what has been really gratifying being in this field for so long is watching the transition. So we transitioned from Biggest Loser contests to, hey, walk around the building and you're going to get a free T-shirt. By the way, a NASA engineer will do anything for a free T-shirt. To incentivizing fun things, to really being able to line programming up with the data that exists through the medical carrier. I am a big proponent on the physicality and the environment in the workplace. So when we're coming up with these designs or coming up with suggestions on what you can do, where you work and what you do day to day makes a huge difference. If I'm working with an industrial group that's outside working all day and doing manual labor, do you think they want me to give them a workout plan? No. They need to know other things that would make their life better. Hey, how do you hydrate? All these little things that you're adding to your water throughout the day aren't doing you any favors. So thinking about what they really need to make their day better. I had a trucking company that was having a hard time with their employees, and the claims were all over the place. The employees were miserable, and I started looking and said, let's, again, when they come pick up the truck to take their load, let me just stand there and watch this. Well, the Department of Transportation does not allow these truckers to drink energy drinks. Did y'all know that? That is a huge no-no. That gives them a liability they do not want. If they're slamming monsters all day, they wreck that load, we got a problem. So it was almost like they were dealing in the parking lot their energy drinks. And I'm like, wait. One, this is illegal. You're not supposed to be doing this. Two, why hasn't the company stepped in and offered a different solution? So what we did is we sat out every morning a long table of healthy snacks already packaged up, waters and other drinks that they were allowed to have, so before they took their load that day, they could grab that and go. That small change, guess what that did? It improved their worksite. It improved the morale of their employees, and it actually improved their business, and it was something so simple. So these are the things that we can dial into to really say, hey, we can do this. So that was all the fun we had before COVID hit. And then quarantine. Oh. So all of a sudden, my team were considered the pandemic experts. I've never lived through a pandemic, nor did I go to school for public health, you all. Like, I have no idea. So we're getting the calls, we're being flooded. What do I do? How do I do it? We scrambled. I joke that my team worked more during the pandemic than we have our entire career combined. I was on the phone from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night trying to calm people down. Like, you don't know, I don't know, we don't know. We're going to figure it out. But the things that came out of this were jaw-dropping to me because I was so on the road to giving out drinks to my truckers, giving stability balls to my bill collectors, and doing all the fun things, and then this. So I started to take note of what was I seeing in industry that was missing that's making this even harder on our employers and their employees and our families than just the obvious. So some things that came out immediately. Stress levels skyrocket. Anger, the intensity, the unknown. We were working differently. We were under a lot of stress. So there were some positives. The first positive is those that were commuting, guess what? Wasn't it awesome not to drive to work? We can all agree on that, right? I don't think anyone missed that commute. Myself, I was commuting to work, and when that commute went away, wow, that was life-changing. Flexibility, we realized, hey, I can get some things done. I can actually sit here and be on this Zoom meeting and have my laundry going, and I'm doing two things at once. For me, in my life right now, as it stands, that's incredible. You know, I was doing two things at once. Some people had time for family, friends, and like I said, myself, I had time for laundry. But then we had some time for some self-reflection and some self-evaluation. So these are some positive things. We had to slow down. We had to take a minute. We had to see, hey, this is some time that I didn't have before. How am I going to use it? But what isn't so much talked about is the negative. When you're working from home, it's really hard to separate home and work. Like I said, I was working at 10 o'clock at night. Before COVID, I was not. I've got 4 kids. Like, there's no way you'd have me working at 10 o'clock at night. So all of a sudden, my work day and my family day merged together, and there was no break. So, all of a sudden, I've got my commuting gone, but I have other things happening. 2, isolation and loneliness. How many people do you work with, or you think of that work is their social aspect? They go to work. They see their work friends. That is their livelihood, especially those that live alone. They weren't seeing anyone all day. So a lot of things bubbled up from that. I would remind my managers that were calling to get help with clients is, we're helping our clients. What about you? Have you called all of your team members to physically say, not with an email or a text, physically say, how are you? Are you okay? Do you need anything? We don't think that way. We live in our world of typing and texting, but if you live alone, you haven't had any human talk to you that day, please have your company check on you. Poor workspace and poor habits. I'm dealing with this right now. We're all back at work and everyone's complaining about their necks, their backs, their knees. The first thing I asked them, Andrea in my office, I'll get there and someone will be waiting for me in my office. I'm trying to work and my neck hurts. What do I do, Jen? Well, how did you work at home? Were you slouched on your couch with your laptop in your lap and you've been doing that for the last year? Yeah, you're going to hurt when you're sitting back at your desk. So the work setup of how we worked at home typically isn't as ergonomically correct as we have in our office. So we are now seeing some musculoskeletal issues bubble up from working at home. And I have one lady, she jokes, she's like, I came back to work and now I hurt. I'm like, no. The way you were working at home did this to you. Like, it's time to change that up. Then obviously some of the negative. Kids, parents, family, child care. That's a lot going on to manage if you're at home all day and you don't have that break. There's just some of the pros and cons, but this is really what I want to focus on is the return to work chaos. We all came back out of that suffering some sort of loss. And that loss varies. A loss, it could be a human loss, it could be a loss of the life we had before. So we're stepping back into the work site, suffering from a loss, and guess what? Everyone's nitpicky, angry, bratty, and we're having what I call the vaccine war. So all of a sudden, your happy workplace where you're having that cup of coffee asking, how'd your son do in his baseball game last night is a completely different conversation than what we were having 6 months before. So what happened to our workforce? Mental health aspect bubbled to the surface to a point where we could not ignore it. So as I worked with my clients, the number one request I had is, Jen, the mental health piece of our wellness program, it isn't there, which is true. It wasn't. We need help. And we need more help than just calling our EAP and hoping that these people can get 3 virtual sessions. We don't know what to do. And I can tell you all, that was not my expertise. With wellness over all of these years, there's been stress management. I have a presentation I give on stress management tactics, but not the mental health side. It's basically, hey, here's some things that you can do to remedy some of your stresses. And I started thinking, what can we do immediately to make our clients feel better, to make these companies feel better? Like, we physically get a person that we can talk to determine the needs of our workforce, and who knows immediate resources. So that's when things started to change. Here's a favorite, you guys. Sorry, I'm skipping around. Getting a wellness budget is next to impossible. You all know that. We beg for it, we plead for it, we finally get that wellness budget. Once the employers see that it's working, guess what happened? My money was spent on masks and hand sanitizer. So most of the wellness budgets just dissolved in front of our faces. So a lot of our clients right now are starting from scratch with their budget, and they have a storeroom of all sorts of hand sanitizers, all sorts of logoed masks, all the things. And I'm looking at 10 years worth of work to create that budget. So for my team, everything changed. So if that's just my small team within Higginbotham, our employers were feeling that pain times 10 because of all the other aspects of it. So where are we? What did we do? Immediate priority for my employers was a mental health component that they could see, feel, touch, and talk to. Someone that could be consistent, someone who knew the industry. So we started looking for a mental health professional. We found Andrea. So what we have done, which is very forward-thinking in industry, because to date we're the only broker that offers this, is we have a designated wellness consultant. All she does is focus on the mental health aspect and serve as our mental health resource. I'm going to let her tell you about all that we've seen since she's been here. But what I recognized immediately in industry, there's a lack of resources. Because before Andrea, the first thing we did, we got on the phone, we reached out to the carrier, we reached out to our wellness vendors, we reached out to our EAPs. Did they have offerings? Kind of, yeah, sort of. Was it providing what the employer needed to fulfill an immediate need? No, not at all. And if you're struggling with something mental health related, you've got to call, set up an appointment. They're mostly virtual. That's really hard for someone that needs something immediately. The mechanism of outreach was similar to a wellness in the wellness initiatives. These two. So if company ABC, you come to me and you say, gosh, I know that my workplace is stressed, but the claims are showing me an increase in hypertension, and we have all of these things. I immediately talk to your carrier. I immediately pull local resources. I immediately look at your environment to see how we can fix that. When you call me and say, hey, we're having a mental health crisis where I work, what do I do? A 1-800 number, and we can find out who your EAP is. Do you see the difference in my response? So with those not being able to align, it wasn't going to work, especially with where we're at now in the world of wellness and our post-COVID response. Product flooding the market. How many of you employers have been called with a vendor trying to sell you a mental health resource? You know you should all just raise your hand right now. So there was a need, companies saw that, and all of a sudden there's all these vendors in market offering things. So what we do now is we vet them. So if you want to use something that is existing, or you see a vendor that, hey, this might be good for my population, instead of you doing the vetting, now we have someone internally that can check that out, see the validity, see the pros and cons. So with that, we have packaged together what we consider the beginnings of our mental health resource within the wellness program. With that, I'm going to pass my mic to Andrea. And we hope she doesn't fall out of her chair.
Thank you. And I think we should first start to say that, yes, I have met Charles Manson, but it's just because he thought he was. And my diagnosis is a super smart, super fun guy. But don't let that go to your head. So what do we know about mental health in the U.S.? It is an issue. This is a infographic from NAMI. If you haven't heard of NAMI, you should know about NAMI as a resource. National Alliance for Mental Illness. It has great educational pieces, and it has a lot of resources specifically for our area. So it has a search engine where you can search, I'm looking for financial help, I'm looking for maybe divorce or grief or loss, what have you. You can search there. So what we know about mental health in the U.S. is that it's an issue, right? 1 in 4 people, it says, 1 in 5 people are experiencing, I feel like I'm not doing this right, experiencing mental illness. Maybe I should stand here. Is this better? Can you hear me? Hear me better. I'm mentally ill right now with this. Sorry, guys. So 1 in 5 people have mental illness. That doesn't necessarily mean when we talk about mental illness, people usually go straight to the Charles Manson, right? That's not true necessarily. I've had clients over the years that are suffering from depression for a circumstance, like, so maybe we just need to seek some treatment for a little while, maybe some medication, maybe some therapy for a little while. That doesn't mean forever. So when this number is 1 in 5, it's not saying the Charles Mansons of the world, it's saying everybody, right? Because Charles Manson isn't working. He's not in the workplace, is he? It's all of us that are in the workplace feeling, I hope not. I hope he's not. That's a whole different conference for us to talk about. So it's the folks suffering from depression, suffering from anxiety, grief, loss, all the things Jen was talking about. Those are the people that we're working with, and there's 1 in 5 of those. It knows no boundaries. Mental health knows no boundaries. Mental unwellness, the left side, your left side, my right side of the slide, talks about all the different populations. It affects everybody. Nobody is not going to be a victim of mental illness on some point. During the pandemic, we all felt anxious. There's no doubt about it, because we were living in an unknown time. Like Jen said, I've never done a pandemic before. How am I supposed to feel? When we're sitting at home and we don't have anybody with us, we're anxious, we're depressed, we're lonely. So we see a lot of mental health crop up. So this slide is just to say it's a thing. Mental health is out there. Mental unwellness is out there. So what do we know about mental health in the workplace? So we did double check this stat. That does say trillion. There is $1 trillion per year in lost productivity according to the World Health Organization. What does that mean? Again, it's not the Charles Manson in the workplace, right? I'm too depressed to come to work today. I'm too anxious. When I'm at work, presenteeism. I'm too anxious to do my job. I don't want to talk to that difficult client. I can't handle it today. So we're not as productive. We are seeing people in claims all the time that they're leaving work to go see the client, to go get help. We're seeing them not show up. We're seeing pharma. Pharma's a big, so this $1 trillion is taking into account claims, pharma, and presenteeism and absenteeism. So it's a really big number. If we give the WHO also said if we put $1 into treatment, we're going to see $4 back. So it's something that people need to care about. And it has to start from the top, because nobody wants to talk about it. There is a stigma. There is a stigma, right? I don't introduce myself and say, hello, nice to meet you, I have diabetes. So I'm not going to say, hello, nice to meet you, I have anxiety, right? We don't do that. There is a stigma. We don't want to air our dirty laundry. We don't. But the pandemic did allow us to talk a little bit more about it. And I am nervous about if I'm going to go back to my job, or what my job is going to look like. Or is my job description now 2 job descriptions? And now I'm real worked up about that. How am I going to handle that? So we are definitely starting to talk a little bit more about mental health because of the pandemic, but the stigma exists. So within the workplace, it's important for it to come from the top, and we'll get into that a little bit on another slide. What we know about mental health in the workplace, like Jen said, we need to educate. What does it mean to be mentally unwell or mentally well? A lot of what I do is educate. I get phone calls all the time. What do I do? What is a bad day versus a bad month versus a disorder? What does that mean? You see this all the time. In fact, when I go out and do workshops, that's one of the main things that I do to connect with clients is do educational workshops. And what we do is we talk about that. What does it look like? We're all depressed sometimes. We are. But that doesn't mean we have a depressive disorder. Or does it? And if it does, what do I do? Who do I go to? Who do I call? Resources are totally underutilized. NAMI, like I said, is a great resource. HR know that? Does HR say, you know, I've got somebody for you, or I know our local resources, or I know who to call? We put resources out all the time because that's what you need in mental health is resources. Don't let it get to the point where you're depressed, where you can't get out of bed. We need to catch it where I'm starting to feel the depression. Come on, I better start utilizing a resource. So that's
important. And helping one person obviously is worth it. My two examples, my two stories, like Jen said, that I like to talk about, we have a group called Able Machines. They're big, burly dudes that move machines. Let me tell you how excited they were at 6 a.m. to hear me come in and talk about mental health. They were rolling their eyes like, I don't want to hear this. But their director knew that there was a couple of guys in the room that had been suffering from the aftermath of the pandemic. They just weren't doing well. And he said, if you can just come and talk, I know they're going to be laying around, the audience isn't going to be great, but please just come talk. So I did, and there was eye rolling and laying in the corner, not caring. But those two guys went and got help. They knew after they heard, and they, okay, maybe I did have an issue, and they actually did seek help. So if we're helping one person, we did really well. Also, the Houston Zoo is one of our clients, and they had a member of a department that had been there for 30-something years and passed away. And she was in the food department, which meant she touched every client, every animal, every employee at the zoo. So she was a really big loss that they suffered. I was able to go in. Now, I am a licensed therapist, so I can do therapy, but I can't do it with every client. But I was able to infuse some therapeutic processes into talking to them about grief and loss, and they worked through it, and they got to cry a little bit, and we got to share that she was great, and they just sort of felt a little bit better about it. And we made it okay to feel sad that she was gone in the workplace because she really was missed. So if we're helping one person with mental health, we can potentially be saving a life. Suicide is real. So mental health is worth it. Paying attention to it anyway. So last slide for me, what does the future hold? Again, leadership needs to make mental health a priority. Because that stigma is there, I'm going to be afraid to talk to my colleagues saying, man, I'm really depressed, because I don't want my boss to hear that, to think I'm not capable, right? I certainly am not going to tell the higher-ups what's going on, because then I'm definitely I might get the boot. That's what I feel. So if leadership starts talking about mental health and starts making it a conversation, doesn't mean you have to say, hi, I'm Andrea, I have anxiety. It just means you have to say, mental health matters to me. It matters to our company. Like Jen said, changing the culture. So if leadership buys in, it's going to trickle down, and so maybe they're going to use that EAP. And a lot of folks think if I use that EAP, my boss is going to know, and it's going to hamster wheel from there. So if the leadership is saying that it's important, then it's going to be important to everyone. Mental health wellness or mental wellness initiatives need to be embedded into the worksite culture as well, just like Jen said with wellness. It's all one piece. Your mind is part of your body. If your mind's not working, your body certainly isn't. I'm not going to go do the exercises and hit my colleague with the ball at the that organization if I'm too depressed or too anxious to do it. I'm not going to interact with my pals. So your brain's part of your body. We got to take care of it. It needs to be embedded. Resources need to be promoted. One of the things that we do if you work with us is we give monthly information, monthly materials, just to get it in front of your face, just to hear about it, just like you do with anything else. If you don't know that your resource exists, we don't want to wait until you can't get out of the bed. So putting those resources in front of people, making them more aware that they exist. Annual education needs to be promoted, and that's the main thing that I do. I think the most of, having come to Higginbotham, is educate. And that's why I came to Higginbotham versus the psych ward, is that I get to educate more people and help more people at the ground level. Because a lot of folks don't know what mental wellness looks like, what mental unwellness looks like. We think we do, but do we really? There's a criteria for everything. There's a timeline for everything. It's not just a bad day. So a lot of it is education, and I think there is people are talking more about it, and I'm super glad to. One more.
With that being said, where are we today? Worksite wellness is in a real interesting place. And I really think that it's changed things that I think that we overlooked, that we ran through, and we became more focused on our claims and utilization than we did the individual employee themselves. This has given us a chance to slow down. And with the Great Resignation and things changing, I'm sure We've all seen those things. It's given employers a time to reflect and say, how can I be the best? A lot of our clients we help with, they're trying to submit their information and recognized for a best place to work. We definitely have a piece in that, because if you have a solid wellness program, you're forward thinking and looking at things that you can do for your employees. It changes your workforce. It changes your worksite. It does things. So there's a new emphasis on specific health promotion initiatives. I'm seeing a little bit of the fun come back. The last 5 years, we weren't doing the fun challenges. We weren't bringing in fruits and vegetables. We weren't doing the walks. We weren't doing the kind of wellness light things. Well, now that we're trying to improve morale, those fun things are bubbling back up. We're seeing people want to do competitions again. Who's getting the most steps? Who's doing this, that, and the other? Hey, is there a 5K that we can do together? So I have seen that begin to revamp itself and come back to our work site. Remote workers are taken into consideration. So when designing a wellness program, one thing that we do is I look at where your employees are located. Someone in Florida is going to be doing something completely different than your employees in Minnesota because it's cold up there. They're not going outside and walking around. I'm trying to get them on a treadmill, right? So I was waiting to hear from you. Wait. We ski, right? We ski. But with that being said, when you're designing programs, there's not one size fits all. So if we have a client that's located in a lot of different places, we take that into consideration because these clients here in this demographic aren't going to want to do what these clients over here are doing. So we play with that internally within the organizations. So what we have done now is we have a whole nother leg for remote workers. So, okay, we are working with your clients in Memphis, and they have X amount of employees here, Florida, New York, and guess what? There's a whole nother leg that I just consider remote work because we do not want to leave these individuals out of our worksite culture. We just need to be creative and revamp what their culture looks like working from home. I'm going to skip the government regulation. We've talked about that. Technological advances have increased in our vendor market. Wellness vendors are not created equal. And that entire demographic of wellness vendors is hard to navigate if you don't know what you're looking for. One, they're acquired regularly. So you might have one day that's now called something else the next day that has similar look. I mean, there's a lot going on in that wellness vendor market. Well, we have taken an opportunity to even almost double the wellness vendors with what's happened with COVID because now there's people working remotely. And the vendor market recognized that they could offer other opportunities technologically. Good and bad. There's a lot involved in that. And when we're doing program design, one of my keys is to keep it simple. Because if you think it's complicated, your employee who just skims the information is really going to find it complicated. And I never want an employer to engage in something that I do not think their employees are going to take advantage of or participate in. Virtual wellness components have flooded the market due to more employees working remotely. Look at Peloton. Y'all, who knew what Peloton was pre-pandemic? Most people did not. Does everyone in this room know what a Peloton is? Yes. Do you do their workouts? Probably some of them, right? Even during the pandemic, I did their free 3-month trial and did all the yoga I could do so I didn't strangle my children. So, you know, we pull those things that are virtual, but I don't know if any of you have followed Peloton, what has happened to them lately. Ooh, they're having a real hard time. So they engage in that market of people being at home, and now that people are back to work and can go back to the gym, Peloton's struggling. So one thing when we're designing programs and thinking of our culture, we take that into account too. Are your employees going to be required to come back to work? Are they going to be in different type of workstations? If they're sharing a station, I have a friend that is a wellness director at a large oil and gas company in Houston, and their biggest struggle is they're doing a system where you check your things into a locker, then you come to like a family-style workstation. Well, ergonomically, that's a mess because you can't leave your station the way that it was the last time you sat there because someone is using it on your flex days. So no one's real happy about that. I see them changing that soon, but if they would have asked their wellness consultants, they would have said, wait, you're going to make everyone real mad. Like, let's figure it out. And two, if you're having to drive to come back to work, do you want to sit in a cube and stare at a wall with no pictures of your family or pets? Not really. So it's those soft skills and those soft things that we can offer to really be successful. And then lastly, this is something that we are stepping into, is genetic testing. So this is a little bit different, and it's a little state-of-the-art. I guarantee you it's going to be the norm in a decade. But we are working with a company that actually does pharmacogenomic testing to tell you what drug specifically your body utilizes the best. And what this ties into very closely is what we call our head meds. When you are prescribed antidepressant, anti-anxiety medicine, how do you know that it's not working? It doesn't work. You go back to your doctor and you say, well, I don't like that one. Let's try another one. It's trial and error. By doing this sort of test, you'll know immediately which one your body is going to respond to. It takes all of the guessing game away. It also works for blood pressure meds and a lot of other medications in the market. But with the world changing and us using this technology and information to be able to implement that into the worksite specifically, we can make huge changes on what care our employers are receiving. And what this is, it's a little kit, it's a mouth swab, they FedEx it in, you get your results back on an app that you can actually share with your doctor. Yes, there's a fee for that. Yes, all the things. I don't sell it. I don't get a kickback, none of those things. I just find it incredibly intriguing that we can take that guessing game out. Because if you're back to work, you realize you need a little bit of help. You go and you are prescribed a medication, and that makes it worse. Where is that employee now? They're worse off than they were here. And at the end of the day, what do we all want? Healthy, happy, productive employees. So it's just another tool that can be offered to improve your work site, to improve the health of your employees. So with that, I'm going to invite Andrea back up. We would love to answer all of your questions. So who we've partnered up with, this company, this is what they do. So they have all the details. It's run through a separate portal. When you do the test, it's sent to your home and then returned directly to them. It never passes through the employer. We would know maybe who did it. I mean, we could ask for the information to be identified just because we're paying the bill. And I know everyone wants to know how much it costs. It's $300 per test, typically based on the sample. But what's incredible to me is a lot of employers have done biometric screenings. You're paying $100 a head minimum for a biometric. When you do a biometric, guess what? Does anyone do anything with the information? We hope they do, but we don't know. With this, it's a one-time test. Your genetics don't change. So once you do the test, you have the information. It never goes away. To date, you can't individually do this. Your doctor has to prescribe it or initiate it. So working with this company, they have decided that there is a place in the market to be able to go into companies and offer this to them as through their benefits plan. Also, we do have 2 medical carriers that we have worked with that have decided that they are willing to let the employer use their wellness dollars to pay for this. So one of my first clients that's about to initiate this, they have a decent wellness budget, and we're spending that to do that this one time, dialing back some of our wellness initiatives, and then it comes back. Also, this isn't something that you say, hey, work population, everybody do it. Once you submit your claims over, this company can look at who would be the most likely to get the most benefit. Because if you don't take any medications, you don't really need your employer to pay for this test. So those that are on the certain medications that would trigger the test, you would be able to work with just those that immediately need it. It's not necessarily everybody. One thing we did negotiate with them is if you are taking the test, you have access to purchase it for your immediate family, whether they're on the plan or not. And then the way that my personal way that I look at benefits, medical benefits, is at any point, this individual that's not on your plan could end up on your plan next year. So I'm a big believer of take care of the whole population. So if I was working with you, I would recommend throw it out there for everybody who utilizes it or needs it, because those that need it most are the ones that are going to come and really want to do the test.
Sarah, I think you are probably sending something out on this week, right? So the affordability we talked about earlier, the percentage you can charge for it to be affordable under your plan, big change next year. Yeah, it's a drop into 9.12%, 9.6%, and what that means, if you're setting your contributions, that's a pretty big difference. So we're going to have to relook at all your contributions this fall, and it goes into effect for plan years starting. And your would be not plan. That's one of the biggest drops we've had in a lot of years. About from the employer.
A rumor that employer.
I hope not, because then my job would be not as important. No, just kidding. I'm kidding. I would love it if employer reporting got simplified. There's actually, again, wow, 2 times in the same day I'm going to use that weird word, bipartisan support for simplifying the employer reporting rules, and there's actually 2 bills that have been proposed in Congress to do so. The big problem is we have a couple little things going on right now, like an election year and a war. And seriously, I'm not joking about those things. Legislation like this that isn't top of the priority list. There's actually, again, both Republican and Democratic proposals to fingers crossed, but I can't.